Good morning, good morning. It's actually the morning. It's 11:15 on the 21st of April 2023. It's Friday. It's Friday, yeah. Hope you're all right. Anyway, I am jumping on today because I've got a little bit of time and I just wanted to give you a little bit of heads up and a little bit of information. Sorry about my hair. I hate it when people do that. When people do that, I'm like, don't do that to yourself, girl. And then I do it to myself all the time. Anyway. I'm dyeing it tonight. Whoop, whoop. So for those of you who don't know me or are new to the page, I just wanted to give you a little bit of framing of the work that I do. And I want to give you some value today. So I've got a little bit of time to do a little bit of explaining about EOTAS, Education Otherwise Than at School, and why I do the work that I do and why it's so chuffing important and what the benefits of it are and all that jazz. And then at the end, I'll tell you a little bit more about, if you need to know more about EOTAS, how you can do that. We have a webinar happening next week. Anyways, so let me give you a little bit of a fill in. Say hi in the comments if you're watching live. If you want to drop some angry face reacts, that's good for the algorithm because everyone loves a bit of drama, but only do it for 30 seconds or my rejection sensitive dysphoria will kick in and I will cry. No one needs to see me snotty, ugly crying. Let's not be honest. People who have been watching me for a while have seen me snotty, ugly crying quite a lot. Anyhow, my name's Heidi Maver. I'm the founder of EOTAS Matters. I work supporting families, parents and carers of children and young people who have barriers to attendance with special educational needs who may need a bespoke package of educational provision not in a school or college setting. I'm also the author of Your Child Is Not Broken, which is a Sunday Times bestseller. Don't you know? What a wanker. And the new release of Your Child Is Not Broken is out on the 11th of May, published by Bluebird Books for Life. And I really hope that you will go and get a copy. Anyhow, I wanted to give you a little bit of the lowdown on EOTAS because I know that I have people who follow me and who are new to the page, and I know that we have people that are new in the group and maybe are like, I don't know what you're talking about. So I thought I'd do that for you this morning. I can't see any comments. If you're listening and you can see and hear me, please just drop me a yo-yo. Not a yo-yo. Oh my God, a yo-yo. I used to love yo-yos. It was one of my special interests when I was a teenager. Anyway, just drop me a hello or a yo-yo in the comments. Is there an emoji for a yo-yo? Who knows? But I wanted to chat with you a little bit about EOTAS. So, full disclosure, hello, Zoe Parker. God bless you. Hello, Tamara from Wales. Good morning, Wales. Good morning, Andrea. Brilliant. You can hear me. Excellent. So I wanted to drop you a little bit of information about EOTAS. If you're seeing Facebook user in the comments, that's because you need to give permission for StreamYard to show your name. Just go up to the top of the video and click it. Yeah. And also to say, I'm fully aware that there's crap in the spare room. There's that there. I'm recording a podcast in about an hour. I need to move that because that looks really non-professional, doesn't it? Anyhow. So what I'm going to give you is a little bit of a top line on why EOTAS is important and why I do the work that I do. Now, I want to preempt this by saying EOTAS, Education Otherwise Than at School, is one route for people, right? It's not necessarily right for every family. It's not necessarily right for every child and young person. And I will start by saying that the road to EOTAS, much like the road to the promised land, is a rocky and tricky one and can be a challenge for even the most stalwart of humans. It shouldn't be. And let's just be honest, it is. I hope you're all right in your tribunal. I got an email yesterday from tribunal saying it's going to be the end of next week for a decision. We'll see. So, Education Otherwise Than at School, EOTAS, is my thing. It's my intense interest. It's my passion. And the reason for that is it's born out of personal trauma, whereby I had a child who was unable to be in a school setting. We didn't know at the time, I didn't know, and it's why I've written a book about it, that my child was autistic and ADHD. But he went from being able to be in school and appearing to be fine. Turns out he wasn't fine. Oh, Sammy, it's you, my love. Hello, wonderful human. He went from being able to be in school and appearing to be fine in school. He wasn't fine, But anyway, he went from that to not being able to be in school at all. Within about 6 weeks, the wheels came off in a pretty spectacular fashion. And I was faced with a baptism of fire into understanding barriers to attendance. And that was pre-lockdown. So this is going back 3 years, 4 years, 3 years. He was at the time 15. So what followed was a baptism of fire, really, into understanding what might be going on. Up until this point, I had no clue that he was neurodivergent. There were clues, but I had no clue. I was fortunate to find my way into a community, several communities, where I was able to learn about special educational needs, autism, neurodivergence, masking, school-based anxiety, emotional-based school avoidance, barriers to attendance really quickly. The people that I learned those things from, mainly, lots of online advocates, but the people who were really important in my journey were Jess Kane from Send Family Instincts, who gave me a lot of time and energy and support. That's why I continue to work with Jess. Not only why, I mean, her service is excellent, but she was a real support to me during that time. Square Peg. So at the time it was Fran Morgan, and now it's Ellie Costello. I learned a lot from Square Peg. I also learned a lot from Christy Forbes from Intune Pathways about PDA parenting and all of that. And I learned a lot from Kieran Rose, the autistic advocate. There were other people that were in my circle, but they were my main circles of influence. And I was really grateful that I fell into that circle, because I know for lots of parents, that doesn't happen, and we end up down a rabbit hole of ableism and horseshit, and people telling us just get them in, they're fine in school, and us making decisions that if we had different information, perhaps we wouldn't make those decisions. So it became clear over the following weeks and months, when Theo wasn't able to be in school, that his barriers to attendance were linked to neurodivergence, and that continuing to force him into school was damaging him. Was damaging his mental health. He was also in autistic burnout. If you want to learn about autistic burnout, actually, Viv Dawes has some really good resources on autistic burnout. I suggest you go and find her. So Viv Dawes, autistic advocate, she's excellent. And I know that she's also writing a book at the moment on autistic burnout, so go and find her. It became clear that he wasn't going to be able to be back in a mainstream setting. And at the time, I thought maybe he needs a specialist. So we pursued some referrals. He was seen urgently because I was able to pull some strings and I knew who to ask. I say pull some strings. I went direct to the top. I went to the top of children's services within the NHS. I didn't know that's not what you're meant to do. So I think that a combination of my naivety and my brazenness got me what I needed to get. I applied for an EHCP needs assessment. Initially, it was refused. I appealed it. They immediately overturned that decision, and we went into an EHCP needs assessment phase. We had a visit from an EP, educational psychologist. At the time, our local authority didn't have any staff educational psychologists, so we're really fortunate. We got a really good locum who had a pretty good understanding. We also were very generously gifted by a friend the cost of a speech and language therapy assessment. We saw the social communications clinic. We were referred to CAMS and got on their waiting list. And we saw the NHS SALT as well. All within the period of the EHCP assessment. Now, I know that we were really fortunate. Not everyone manages that. As a minimum, you should have an educational psychologist, and many of us only have that. And it was only because I was surrounded by bolshy bitches who told me to knock on more doors that I got more. And generous people who supported us financially, because at the time I was not working and Theo wasn't in school. So what followed after that, in terms of timeline, Theo had then been out of school well over 15 days. And I had been told, and this is what I tell lots of families, and this is really important if you're in this situation. If your child has been out of school or has missed more than 15 days of school due to a health need, and that can be mental health or physical health, then the local authority are legally responsible for making suitable full-time provision. Disclaimer, they don't do it. You'll usually have to complain. You might even have to go to the Ombudsman. Later today, I'm going to share some Ombudsman rulings from this week. I think 2 or 3 of them are around alternative provision, but the law is clear. You might get pushback about they haven't got a doctor's note, you haven't been signed off by a medical professional. That's what I had. I complained. It went all the way to Ombudsman. We ended up getting compensation for that about 2 years later, but still. But this is what good advice is necessary for. You need to know what your rights are to follow those steps. So the first step that I knew that I needed to address was I needed school to authorize absences for the main reason being that if they were authorizing absences, I reduced my risk of fines and prosecutions. You can be fined and prosecuted as a parent if your child is out of school and absences are unauthorized. The head teacher has discretion over whether they progress you to being considered for fines and prosecutions. It's the head teacher. So it's the head teacher you need to speak to first and foremost. And the DfE guidance says that unless a school has reason to believe that your child is not unwell, or to doubt the veracity of their illness, they must authorize those absences. A good place for that is not fining school. Go and find them. They're incredible. Jody is saying, my local authority told me yesterday they can't offer my son anything without an EHCP and he's been off for 7 weeks. That's bullshit, Jody. That's absolute bullshit. I will link the video that I have on this. Let me just see if I can find it. I think it's on my website. Give me 1 minute. So I knew that I needed to get my my absences authorized. And I knew, just looking, here we go. I think it's here. Yeah. So if you go to the free resources page of my website, there is a video called Authorized Absences, What to Do When School Asks for Medical Evidence and Won't Authorize Absence. I'm popping it in the comments, the link to the website. There is also a video pinned in the top of my Facebook group. If you go on my website, you'll find a link to the Facebook group. In the pinned videos at the top, there's a step-by-step process for what do you do if your kid isn't in school in terms of authorizing absences and making the complaint to the local authority. The law is clear. 15 days out of school, the local authority are then responsible for making suitable full-time alternative provision. End of. You don't need to prove that they've got a special educational need. They don't have to have an EHCP. They just have to be off school for that length of time and for it to be linked to illness. And you need to speak to the school about their responsibility for recording code I for illness. Okay. I was told hospital, school, or nothing. Rubbish. Suitable alternative full-time provision. Okay. If you've complained, Emma, that's about complaints. There is also a website, a webinar on my website. Go to webinars, go to the complaints, the art of complaining. There's a webinar you can watch. Okay. I'm going to try and keep on topic. So I knew that if I complained about 15 days absence, we would be alternative provisioned legally. We weren't. What then followed for us was we were under CAMS. I fought really, really, really hard to get CAMS to state that Theo had barriers to attendance. It was really tricky. They kept trying to discharge us. We were waiting for an autism assessment. We were seeing the CAMS worker every 3 weeks. He was using CBT. It wasn't particularly helpful for my child. Different people have different experiences with CBT. Adapted CBT is what you need for neurodivergent children, or adapted DBT. There's some good resources on that. Google that. Sorry, I don't have it to hand. But either way, they kept trying to discharge us. And I just kept saying, don't discharge me. Please don't discharge me until we have school sorted. You cannot discharge us. This is a mental health need. And you need to not discharge us. Finally, I was able to get the CAMS worker to write a letter of support that basically said this child is experiencing anxiety, which is heightened in school. I also got a letter from my GP that said that the GP had seen him and could confirm that he was waiting for an autism assessment and that he was displaying significant distress and anxiety. That was enough in my case to get school to authorise absences and to get a referral to an alternative provision that happened to be a hospital-based pupil referral unit. So we got a medical needs alternative provision. Now, in my area, there is a social, emotional, mental health PRU, pupil referral unit, linked to the medical needs tuition brand, the hospital school. It's worth looking to see if there is something like that near to you. And the reason I say this is that if your child is experiencing barriers to attendance that link to mental health and or neurodivergence, a regular PRU, pupil referral unit, who are tasked with basically over a 12-week period getting your child ready to return to a mainstream setting, may not be the right setting for them. A medical needs-based pupil referral unit is much more likely to have children and young people like your child who have emotional-based school avoidance difficulties, barriers to attendance, significant sensory needs. Almost all the children and young people that were in that PRU with my child were carbon copies in terms of their school experience of my child. For us, that was a good work. I know that for not every family that's true, but what I would say is find out if there is a medical needs, social, emotional, mental health based PRU or alternative provision in your area. And that what I did was I called that PRU. And I didn't know because someone told me. No one tells you these things. My educational welfare officer didn't tell me. My SENCO didn't tell me. The local authority didn't tell me. They were all like pretending that this setting didn't exist. And when we got there was a child from my son's school at that setting. So I knew that school knew about it because they'd referred another child there. Anyway, I called the PRU and I said, how do I get my son in with you? And they talked me through the process. They were great. I'm forever grateful to them. And then I was able to get done what I needed to get done to get him into school. Tamara, I need to be honest, I don't know my way around the Welsh system. I'm really sorry. Wales is different and it's just not something I have the expertise to advise on. And I am so sorry. I will at some point, Wales is on my longer list. Yeah, I'm really sorry. So let me just put a pin in PRU and let me just see if there's anything else. If school label absences is unauthorized and then puts code something else B for the provision and paying for, does that count? They won't put I. Is B educated off site? I can't remember what that code means. It should be code I. It should be code I for illness. If they're not making that provision, it should be code I for illness. And they should be funding it. If they're coding it like that. My child has been told by college to stay at home. They have an EHCP since December 2022. Nothing has been put in place for education. What should I do? Escalate, complain to the local authority, failure to meet provision outlined in the EHCP. Okay. Thank you, Caroline. Carol. Yeah, that was our situation, Karen. My son has been out of school since September 21. We have a draft EHCP 11 weeks ago and spoke about EOTAS, and now they want him to send him to school, but he will never attend. CAMS now want to discharge us. Just refuse to be discharged would be my advice. I had to say to them, if you discharge me, I will complain. I'll go to PALS. You can't discharge me. My child is not well. My son's a specialised provision, attends 2 to 3 days a week, always threatening fines. I've provided 1 a week alternative place. What else can I do? Complain. Complain. My answer to everything is complain. I know it's a pain in the arse, but honestly, it's the only way that doors get broken, that kick down. It comes down to case officers in local authorities have such massive caseloads that they prioritise based on who is in tribunal and who has made the biggest fuss. So you have to get yourself up that list by formalising a complaint. So a specialist provision should not be threatening fines and prosecutions. I would probably be asking for an annual review, Martina, because it sounds like that's not the right setting for your child. Yes, tomorrow, one day. I think in our area of combined PRU and the medical education service, that worried me. For us, that's what they have, and it worked, but it's different. It's different. Interesting, that didn't come up as an option C in our inclusion meeting yesterday. What, the PRU? And I know they have spaces, Suzanne. I know that you're in my LA as well. Yeah. Here we go, Stacey. Definition of Code B. Ultimately, schools are responsible for the safeguarding and welfare of pupils educated off-site. Therefore, by using Code B, schools are certifying that the education is supervised and measures have been taken to safeguard pupils. Also, Stacey, they're using that for an attendance tick because educated off-site counts as full attendance. So, and we know that schools are under a lot of pressure. In England is the PRU film. Yeah, don't watch that. It's shit. It's not accurate. Our PRU was full-time. Yeah. My son's only doing 3 hours daily. If you haven't got any HCP, I would make an application for any HC needs assessment as soon as possible. Complain, Heidi. Here we go. Now, I'm going to add this in because I know that Samantha has great insight into a different way of doing this, and I'll carry on telling you what I did. And like I said at the beginning, this is the one way of doing it. So I did things slightly differently. I had a good relationship with the school. They did agree to fund the alternative provision that I sourced, but I said, no, I'm going to the LA. I costed it, but I wanted the LA to fund it. So when she left in the summer, I already knew that the LA were funding it. I had her sessions off-site coded as B, so I didn't get fined. They agreed to fund it when I threatened full-time education. Also, Samantha won't mind me saying this, she is an absolute badass bitch. I would never say no to Samantha. And we've had that conversation when she said, yeah, no, I know that, not everyone could do this. And she also has a million children. She doesn't. When she's like old Mother Hubbard, and she's like genuinely Mother of the Year. So you can learn a lot from Samantha. And she is also in my EOTAS Matters community. And I also want to say that people are here like that are commenting. And if you get in my group, you will see so much experience from other parents. Okay. Thank you for that, Samantha. That's super helpful. Can we ask for more alternative provision days or more nurturing activities off-site? He likes the school, struggles to stay all day, EHCP review in 4 weeks. So that would be a flexi schooling arrangement, but yes, you can absolutely ask for that. It does come down to the evidence that you have to support the need for that. So I would be making sure that your paperwork for your review is in good order. There is an annual review webinar on my website. There's also some really excellent information on the IPSI website. Just Google IPSI annual review and it comes up. Okay. I'm a neurodiverse specialist teacher, whoop, whoop, and have been living this exactly with my current student. Tribunal was moved from March as they currently have 16,000 appeals waiting to be heard. Yes. So trying to put the non-vulnerable back slightly, which is ridiculous. Jump ahead to next week when we have our final date and the LA have finally crumbled. But now the typical parent does this without support is beyond me. Exactly. How complain is absolutely the only way and collect evidence every step of the way too. Honest to God, you need to become a paperwork demon. However you do it, like I printed stuff off. I don't know if I can even show you, but this, I don't want to show you. I've got 2 big Lever Arch files that are my paperwork for Theo. One for health, one for education. But I have a Google Drive where I put everything in and I label everything. I use my emails as a filing system. I'm ADHD. I find filing really tricky. But you need to find a system that works for you. Keep evidence for everything. Record every meeting. Like make an actual recording. If it's for your own records, you don't need to get consent. It is literally for your own records, though. You can't use it as admissible evidence. Follow up every phone call with an email. Make sure you clarify in writing. Just stop taking phone calls as much as you can. I mean, like, you want to be working with the people who are on side, but, you know, I very early in the process stopped taking phone calls from my caseworker, for example. Okay, I'm going to get back to the story in a minute. I'm loving this. It's basically just complain. I know that's the only way I've made progress. Oh, honestly, it's a pain in the ass, and it shouldn't be that way, but it is. Okay, I'm going to just start where we're up to on comments, because otherwise I won't get through the rest of the story. Anyway, I want to share what happened next. So he was in the PRU. The PRU that we had was only up to 16. He was in his second year of GCSEs. We were really fortunate. He settled well in that PRU. I know not everyone has that privilege, but touch wood, it was the right thing for us. He was, you know, every child is different. He was just so desperate to be back in an environment with other people. He'd been at home for months and had been really poorly and was still really poorly, but it was a good environment for him. Anyway, so we knew that we were fast approaching post 16. We were still in the EHCP process, so we were still firming up an EHCP. We'd got through the assessment, and we were at like the issue stage. We got a refusal to issue. I appealed it. They overturned it. They agreed to issue. So we then, without tribunal, by the way, thank God. So we then were in a situation where I needed to find a setting for my child, because he was in the PRU. It was clear he couldn't go back to the mainstream. His reports and his EHCP clearly pointed to specialist, because it pointed to small class sizes, small cohort, access to assault and an OT, and like lots of reasonable adjustments and accommodations for his sensory needs and his mental health needs. The only option, we looked at numerous settings. All the while, the local authority is suggesting a mainstream college. With the mainstream college, I went and saw the SENCO. My son was identified as experiencing situational mutism by the speech and language therapist. Basically, I scared the hell out of the SENCO and went and said, look, here's the deal. I know the LA have sent you a first draft of his EHCP, but this child doesn't speak when he's anxious. And you're not going to be able to teach him. So I'm going to need to say that you can't meet need based on special educational needs. And the guy was perfectly reasonable, and that's what he did. Not everyone has that experience. I know that, but it is worth, if you know that the LA are going to consult with a setting that you know is not going to work for your child, get on the phone and speak to the SENCO, right? And tell them how to say they can't meet need. You'll be amazed at how many SENCOs don't know how to do that, and they have to be very clear about how they're stating they can't meet need. What actually happened for us is that the local authority said that's not legal. And so I had to go to appeal. And we did go all the way to tribunal on that. So in the meantime, we're waiting for an appeal date, and I hadn't been able to find a setting. The only place I found that was suitable for him and that would consider taking him was an independent Quaker school with a resource unit attached for neurodivergent children. I looked at mainstreams with resource units attached. The cohort wasn't suitable for him. They weren't able to meet his needs in terms of his academic capabilities. So, and these were mainstream funded settings with resource provisions attached. The specialist schools weren't appropriate because of his age. He was 16. There's hardly any post-16 provision specialist in our area, aside from a vocational college, which was not appropriate for him because he wanted to and was able to study at A level. So they were for children, young people who hadn't been able to secure GCSE level qualifications. He was working towards those whilst he was in the PRU. He had an amazing art teacher and they smashed through our GCSE in 6 weeks. This was also during lockdown. In the meantime, we get an EHCP. They name his existing mainstream setting. We appeal. Wait for tribunal. At the time, the wait for tribunal wasn't as much as it is now. It is now over 12 months. At the time, it was about 7 months. But we're in lockdown. So we're on teacher assessed grades, which worked for us. So he managed to get 5 GCSEs. He worked really freaking hard, actually, and he got 5 GCSEs. So we couldn't find a setting for him post 16. And I was like, what do I do? The only place that was suitable was this independent Quaker with this resource unit, but they couldn't take him because they were full. And because it wasn't a mainstream school, because it was a independent, the LA can't force a placement there. Whereas in a mainstream, they can, or in a state-funded specialist, they can say, we're naming you anyway. So I was in this position where I had a child ready to go into post-16 and no setting for him. The local college said they couldn't meet need. The specialist resources had said it wasn't appropriate for special educational needs. The local authority were naming a mainstream. What do I do? And someone said to me, have you thought about EOTAS? And I was like, what's that? And they were like, it's education otherwise than at school. I could not find any useful, reliable, concrete information about EOTAS, how it works, what it is. But in essence, what I have discovered since then, what I decided to do is, if that doesn't exist, I'll freaking find it and I'll make it. So I have spent the last 2 years since we went to tribunal. We had the tribunal in the July, we were awarded EOTAS. So we were able to prove on the basis of EOTAS that it would be inappropriate for my child to be educated on a school or college setting, because there was no school or college that could meet need. There were no placements, and his special educational needs and support needs were such that he could not be in a school or college setting. So we had a 12-month EOTAS package, and that's what all EOTAS packages are, because you've got to review your EHCP every year. And he had a 12-month bespoke package. And in that package, we had, I had been paying for tutoring. So again, acknowledge the privilege here. I'd been paying for some private tutoring with Gecko Community, and I was able to evidence that was working. So when it came to tribunal, I was able to provide reports from that provider that said, this is what he's doing, this is what he's engaging in, this is what we can provide him for the next 6 months, 12 months, this is how much it will cost. So that went into my request for tribunal to consider EOTAS. So I was able to evidence what his year would look like, always with the kind of like the understanding that, and at the end of that 12 months, we'll see if we can progress him back into a mainstream setting. That's what he wanted. Okay, if he hadn't wanted that, that would have been different. So we got EOTAS. We had 12 months of tutoring. He did he did 2 ASDANs. So he did an extended project ASDAN, which is equivalent UCAS points of an A-level or a GCSE, an A-level, I think. Which he did on, the good thing about ASDANs is that they can be interest-based. So he did his ASDAN on animal training. 1 minute. Theo, get dressed. We've got to leave in 8 minutes. Okay, but you can get dressed now. Cool. My fault. My fault is not out of bed, obviously. So we got, we also had an OT package. We had SALT provision. We had a psychotherapy package as well. CAMS had in the meantime discharged him. We don't deal with autistic kids. So I was able to make a case for independent, privately funded psychotherapy. And we went into a year of EOTAS. That year made all the difference. What can be achieved in 12 months with EOTAS when you have the right providers? Oh, he also had a learning support mentor who he still works with for 10 hours a week, who did all the preparation for adulthood stuff, embedded his occupational therapy in his plan, helped him to be less grumpy in the mornings. But it worked for us. And when you get it right, and I have seen this, it's not always plain sailing. It's not always a walk in the park. And when you get EOTAS right, it is life-changing, life-saving, life-affirming. And that is why I'm so passionate about it, because that's why I need people to know that this is an option for them. I'm not going to be able to do all these comments. I'm so sorry. I know you can see each other's comments. But I'm going to have to whiz through because I've got to go and do some parenting stuff. I need to get offline, apparently. Slammed door. Welcome to my world. I promise I'm not neglectful. He just lies in his pit until I tell him to get out of it. And then he gets cross with me. It's fine. We're okay. We had a conversation before I came online, just to be clear. And also, we had a conversation about how the morning was going to do and what the timings were and where we were going to be. Anyway, I don't have to explain myself to you. You know how it is. Yes. So I can't do all of these comments. I'm so sorry. I might come back to them later on. But what I want to say is, Yes, you can apply for EOTAS whilst you're homeschooling. You need to state that you no longer wish to electively home educate. What I want to be clear about is EOTAS is not home education. You can home educate with a personal budget, right? You can ask the local authority to I can't answer urgent stuff. I'm really sorry. I can't do that. If you've got questions, get in the group and we'll help you over there. That's why I do things this way, because look at how many people need help from me and I just can't do it. I'm so sorry, Hayley, but get in the group and we'll help you there. So what was I saying? I see. Oh my God. Yeah, I can't remember what I was saying. See? Squirrel. What was I saying? Can you remind me what I was saying? So when you get it right, yeah. So home ed, you can get a personal budget for home ed, but you can only get a personal budget for the special educational provision. So anything above and beyond what would be available in a mainstream setting. Hayley, I will post a link to the group. If you go on my website, actually, that's the best place to go. Go to HayleyMaver.com, go to For Parents, get the link from the group for the group there, and you will be able to join us that way. Get in the group, we'll help you over there. I know we need to leave. We're going. Are you dressed?
I'm dressed.
No. I also want to say Theo, we have a webinar next week. Please come and join us on it. Here's my website.
Come on, you're going to be late.
Here's a link to the webinar. I'm going to go. I'll pop it in the comments. I'm in big trouble. See you all later. Bye.
We're going to be late.
We're going to be late.